Webinar this afternoon on shared parental leave and pay in Sage 50 Payroll. I'm Duncan, I'm your host and presenter, and we are joined by Calvin, my colleague, who's standing by in the background, and he will be on question duty today, so he will be answering the questions that you could submit via the Q&A section. Let's now take a look at what we're going to cover in the webinar. So we will begin with a brief introduction to statutory shared parental pay and go through some of the eligibility criteria. We're then going to demonstrate how to set up shared parental pay in Sage 50 Payroll, and that would be both for a partner that's sharing leave with the mother or main adopter, and also where a mother or main adopter chooses to share the remainder of their entitlement and they're taking the leave themselves. So a lot of flexibility with this statutory payment. It can be used in lots of different ways. We're then going to go on to process the payment as part of our pay run. So we'll show you where to check the amount and how to deal with any adjustments to the salary and any deductions. And then we'll cover off reclaiming shared parental pay, which works in exactly the same way as other parental payments at the end of each tax month. I'll run through some of the further support available. And as I say, we'll stick around at the end to give you that chance to submit any of your final questions. So let's get started with an introduction. So the title of the webinar was Shared Parental Leave and Pay, or SPL and ShPP. So the leave element, shared parental leave, is an entitlement of up to 50 weeks of parental leave that could be shared between the mother or main adopter and their partner. And the paid element is shared parental pay. So statutory shared parental pay, to give it its full title, and that's an entitlement of up to 37 weeks, which again can be shared between qualifying parents. So the way it works is it enables mothers or adopters to officially end their maternity or adoption leave early and then share the remaining week's pay and leave with their partner. And this is something that replaced additional statutory paternity pay, I think back in 2015. Now, I have linked to the gov.uk guidance because there's loads of useful information on the legislation side of things. But to briefly go over the eligibility for the payment specifically, and that's what we'll focus on in the webinar, because that's what you'll be processing through your payroll. So an employee can get shared parental pay if one of the following applies. So if they are eligible for statutory maternity pay or statutory adoption pay, in the case of a mother or main adopter, they would then be able to share out any remaining leave if they end that early. Or if they're eligible for statutory paternity pay and their partner is eligible for SMP maternity allowance or SAP, that would make the partner eligible to share the remaining entitlement. So qualifying conditions are all dependent on the original statutory payment, whether that's maternity, adoption, or paternity. In terms of rate of pay, it's the standard rate of £172.48 per week. That's for the 2023 to 24 tax year, or 90% of average weekly earnings, whichever is lower. So that's the same rates as you'd get for paternity pay and the standard rate of maternity and adoption. So how can an employee get shared parental pay? Well, first of all, the mother or adopter must officially end their statutory maternity pay or adoption pay and return to work, although they may not have to physically return to work if they're taking the shared leave immediately, or give binding notice of the date they'll do this. So both parents need to give at least 8 weeks written notice of their entitlement to the leave and pay, and they will need to tell you how they intend to share the leave and pay between them. And you will only need to get this information from your specific employee. And there are some really useful forms and templates available from the ACAS website, which gives your employees everything they need to give this notice. And we'll have a look at an example of that form when we go into the demo. So let's just have a quick discussion on when they can actually take the leave. So unlike paternity or maternity pay, which has to be taken in a continuous block. With shared parental pay and leave, each parent can take up to 3 separate blocks of leave, and this can be taken at different times to each other, or even at the same time as the other parent. So to try and illustrate that, here's a graphic which represents standard maternity or adoption pay, which you can get for 39 weeks. And the partner would get their statutory paternity pay for 1 or 2 weeks after the baby is born. And if they choose not to use any shared, this would be the arrangement. Mother or adopter would take the 39 weeks, the partner would have their 2 weeks. Now, if they decide that they're going to end the maternity or adoption early, so in this case, the mother or adopter has decided to end it early and hand over the remaining leave to the partner can be paid for that for whatever number of weeks entitlement is remaining. So that is how it used to work really with additional paternity pay, where a mother could end their leave and then the partner would continue from that point. But there is a lot more flexibility with shared parental pay. So here's another example. So they might officially end their leave at a particular point. And it is worth noting that the mother must take a minimum of 2 weeks maternity leave or 4 weeks for a factory worker before they can switch to shared leave. But they could then take some of the leave at the same time as each other. And in this example, the partner is going to take the remainder of the leave after the mother goes back to work. Or they might choose to split it up into blocks. So this could be taken at the same time or at different times. There can be gaps in between. They probably have annual leave that needs to be used up. And the mother, if they wanted to, doesn't even need to involve the partner. They could share the leave with themselves if they wanted the flexibility to break it up into those separate blocks. But there's just a few illustrations of how it might be used. So that's just a bit of an intro. We're now going to show you the practical side of this and how to set it up in Sage 50 Payroll. A bit of a process flow just to run through first. So there's 2 different scenarios. You might be setting up shared parental pay for a mother or adopter. And in that case, you would just need to enter the return to work date when they're officially ending the maternity or adoption leave. You would then enter the shared parental pay details and the dates of the shared parental pay absence. For the partner, it's just a case of ensuring that the paternity pay details have been entered, and then it's the same process, shared parental pay details and the absence dates. And we're going to have a look at that process from both sides in our demo. So I mentioned the forms and templates that you can get from ACAS. So there is a link to this on the handout. Just download this Word document. This is probably the most common one for shared parental leave after maternity leave. Here's an example that I filled in. So it's quite a meaty document, 10 pages in total, but the first page explains which forms need to be filled in depending on who's going to be taking the shared parental leave. So in this example, we've gone with one where just the partner will be taking shared parental leave, and it tells them they need to fill in forms 1, 3, and 4. So form 1 is completed by the birth parent or mother in this case, and it just confirms that they're curtailing or cutting short their maternity leave and pay, and they're confirming how many weeks of leave they have taken at that point. So this example, they're going to end it after 33 weeks. Form 2 doesn't need to be filled in this particular scenario. Form 3 is just to confirm that the partner will be taking all of the shared leave. The birth parent is not, so that also goes to the mother's employer. And then this one goes to the partner's employer, explaining that they've got 6 weeks that they want to take, and they would put the dates from and to. So it looks pretty complicated, but if they have a read through the guidance, it basically allows them to provide all the information that's needed for you to then go ahead and set this up. So that form's available from the ACAS website, and the link should be there on your handout. So let's now get this set up. We're going to start with a partner, who is going to be taking over the parental leave with 6 weeks remaining from their partner. But the main adopter or mother doesn't work for this business. We are only employing the partner in this scenario. So we would start by finding the employee. And for this type of parental leave, you do need to enter the details directly in the employee record. So you would click onto the absence tab, and then you would click to the original statutory payment that was received. So this employee actually had 2 weeks of paternity pay after the baby was born. So if I click on SPP, we can see that that's already been set up. It was back in November last year. They've taken their 2 weeks. So 2 weeks have been previously paid, and we've got the dates that the baby was born and the dates that they took that original leave. Now, because they're going to be taking shared parental pay, we click on this button here on the right-hand side, and we then fill in this information based on the form we received. So we've had the declaration. On that declaration, they stated that 6 weeks were available. Now, there's no way that we can verify that because we don't employ this employee's partner. So we don't employ the mother in this case, but they've signed that declaration. So we just need to take it off of that. They are taking all 6 of those weeks. So that was what they intend to do. And the number of weeks recorded, you would leave at 0 because that needs to be recorded on the absence diary. So what you then do is you enter the partner details, which again will be on the form. And their NI number should also be provided on that paperwork. And if you click onto OK, and then OK again, that has then established the 6-week entitlement to the shared parental pay. Now, what you then need to do is to enter the absence. So 2 ways you could do this. I'll show you the first way. You can click onto diary entry. You choose the absence type. So this falls under the other category. And the one you're looking for is shared parental, which is all the way towards the bottom. And then you enter the dates that they intend to take their leave. Now, conveniently, this employee is taking it in one block of 6 weeks. And the absence dates that we had on the form were the 19th of June through to the 30th of July. We can enter our own comment if we want to. If we click OK, it then records the absence in a similar way to how you record sickness. So it's showing in lowercase at the moment, which indicates that these entries are yet to be paid. They're not historical at this point. And if you go back in to the shared parental pay section, you can actually verify that I have now recorded 6 weeks. So those dates that I entered was 6 weeks, which was the full entitlement that this employee had. Now, just like any other statutory payment, it will calculate up to your process date. So when we go on to processing, it'll calculate up to the 30th of June, which is the pay date for this employee. But at this point, everything is set up and ready to go. So that was entering the details for a partner. We're now going to do something similar, but this is for a mother who has decided to curtail their maternity leave and then use the rest of the entitlement as shared parental pay and leave. This was employee number 4 in my payroll. And just like before, to set it up, you go into the employee record, you go onto the absence tab, and then you go into the original statutory payment. So it could be maternity, it might be adoption. But in this case, it was SMP that was paid originally. And there's a bit of information that we'll need to fill in. So first of all, we need to fill in baby's date of birth. So it was a day late, 6th of May. And we also need to enter the return to work date. If they were returning, this employee actually is going to take some shared leave, but the return to work date, so the date after the end of their maternity leave. So this employee has decided to do 6 weeks of SMP, which would all be paid at the higher rate, and then they're going to share the remaining 33 weeks with their partner. So the return to work date in this instance is the 5th of June. They're not actually going to return to work though. They're going to use, from that date, they're going to start using shared parental leave and pay. So once that has been entered, you can see that it shows in the shared parental pay section, there are 33 weeks remaining. And if we click onto shared parental pay, we can then fill in the same details as what we filled in for the other employee. So we've had the declaration, there are 33 weeks available in total. However, this employee will be taking 13 of those weeks, and the partner will be taking the 20. So 13 is what we've entered here. Remember, we don't fill this in, this fills in automatically when we record the absence diary. We'll put the partner details in and the NI number. And then we can click onto OK, which then sets up the entitlement. So it's now just a case, just like before, of recording the dates that they are taking the leave. And for simplicity, I'm just going to go with a full block of 13 weeks for this demo. So they're going to start theirs on the 5th of June, and it's going to run right the way through to the 3rd of September. Just referring to my notes there. So the way I'm going to record it this time is just by selecting that date range on the diary. So you can see that date range is selected. And if I right click, go to absence, you can record the shared parental leave this way as well. So either diary entry or select the dates and right click. That's all been entered onto the diary. And if I go back into the SMP section, we can actually see that that was 13 weeks. So I've got my dates right. I've recorded all of the absence, and that will now calculate when we come to process our payroll. So we've now got that set up. Let's just recap that process, going back to our flowchart. So for the mother or main adopter, the one we've just seen, we go into the SMP or SAP details. We enter the return to work date, so the date after they end their maternity or adoption leave. Also enter the date of birth if that hasn't already been entered. You can then move on to enter the SHPP details, declaration, weeks available, weeks being taken, and partner details. And then the absence dates are done via diary entry. It's an other type of absence, and it's shared parental that you would need to choose. And there for the partner, very similar. Go back into the original statutory payment, click the shared parental pay section, and then fill in the exact same details. So we've seen the setup process there. Let's move on and see how this looks when we come to run our payroll. So just to summarize the steps we'll go through here, we're going to set our process date to the employee's pay date. And always keep in mind that the statutory pay will calculate up to that date. It's never paid in advance. We're going to have a look at checking the SHPP amount. So it can be checked on the SSP Parental Leave tab. And then we'll come back and adjust payments. So if you've been on the maternity or paternity pay webinars, it's done in exactly the same way. So jumping back to the demo, we'll start with employee 2. I've already set my process date. So my employees are paid on the last day of the calendar month. And I'm now going to jump straight into enter payments. So currently we have the full salary entered, but we will come back and make an adjustment to that. And if I click the summary tab, you'll see the shared parental pay is displayed down here as a separate amount. And if we wanted a breakdown of that total amount, we can select it, click the drop down. That's took us to the SSP Parental Leave tab. And then we can see here that between our pay date, 30th of June, and the start of leave, there is 1.71 weeks. It's being paid at the standard rate, and that's a total of £295.68. So we can see the total here, we can see the breakdown here on the SSP Parental Leave tab. And if we're happy with that, we're happy with the absence dates and the amount being calculated, we just then need to make an adjustment to the pay. Now, for this particular employee, we do not have anything written into the contract about supplementing the shared parental pay. So we're not going to be making up to basic. There's no company shared parental pay that we want to pay out. So the adjustment for this month will involve just paying them for the hours or days that they've worked this month. Now, you'll have different ways of working this out. Just follow the similar process to what you would do for a starter or a leaver that doesn't work for a full period. And what I'm actually going to do is adjust the hours value for this fixed salary to reflect the fact that this employee has worked for 12 out of a possible 22 working days this month, and therefore this is the amount of salary that I want to pay them. So that's their salary for the time they worked. This is the shared parental pay, and this it is broken down into weeks, and we can then go ahead and save this record and move on to our next employee. We'll take a look at employee 4 as well. So jumping into the enter payment screen for them. They're not currently getting any salary, so we don't have a company maternity scheme in this example, and they have been on leave since a few weeks before the baby was born. But if I hit the summary tab, we can see we have a small amount of maternity pay. So this is the end of the 6 weeks of maternity pay that they are receiving. And then we have shared parental pay up to our process date. So the breakdown of the shared parentals, 3.714 weeks between the start date, 5th of June and the 30th of June. And for the SMP, it's 0.57 weeks. So they're just getting the end of that higher rate period of pay. So this is what they're getting in total. Not making any adjustments. If there was a company scheme in place where we wanted to make up to their full pay, we could use the make up basic option. So as a reminder of how that works, you would enter the full salary like so. You'd go to the summary tab and you would click make up basic. It'll then prompt you to make an adjustment. And you can see it's reduced the payments, leaving the employee with their usual salary amount. But actually in this case, that scheme doesn't exist. So we're just going to pay them the statutory pay. And unusually, there are 2 statutory payments being paid this period, which is absolutely fine. They're transferring from maternity to shared parental. So a few warning messages coming up there. So you would then complete your payroll in the usual way. So let's take a look at the pay slips. So I'm just going to run a standard pay slip layout for these employees. Now, it doesn't specifically say it's shared parental pay, it's just a general parental pay label. So this is for the first employee. They're getting a reduced salary that we worked out and their parental pay up to the end of the month. And this was the other employee, and this is the combined maternity and shared parental pay payable for this month. That's actually what they would have got had they stayed on SMP as well. It's just they now have the flexibility of sharing that leave and pay with their partner. So as with other parental payments, there is a column for it on the payment summary part 1 report. So it's lumped in with other parental payments, as you can see there. And if I update the records for everyone on my payroll, you would then submit the FPS in the usual way. So this just sends through the details of the tax and NI, the taxable pay, and that is our pay run complete. And I just want to show you the absence diary now for these 2 employees. So similar to statutory sick pay, this is now historical information. So it's showing a capital letter as a diary entry. We're seeing exactly the same for the other employee with the future dates, the dates that haven't been paid yet, still appearing in lowercase. So that is processing the shared parental pay. Hopefully pretty straightforward, that one. And that takes us on to reclaiming it from HMRC. So if you are familiar with the process for maternity and paternity pay, it's pretty much exactly the same for shared parental pay. So small employers relief is something that employers can claim if they have Class 1A NICs of £45,000 or less in the tax year before the qualifying or matching week. If you get small employers relief, you get 103% of the statutory parental payments back. If not, you get the standard reclaim percentage of 92%. So it's worth checking if you're processing any parental payment whether or not you qualify for this relief. And if you do, there's a checkbox in the company settings that you will need to select. Once that's set up, at the end of the tax month, you would run your P32, and that will itemize any statutory parental payments that you are recovering. And because you're making an adjustment to your payment, you're recovering the statutory pay, you will need to do an EPS submission. That's an employer payment summary to inform HMRC of the amounts reclaimed. And that needs to be done no later than the 19th of the following calendar month. So quick look at this in the demo. First of all, for the small employers relief, if you qualify for it, go into company and settings, make sure you've ticked this box, eligible for small employers relief for 23-24. So that's something we recommend you do at the start of each tax year. We'll run the P32 report. So a couple of places you can do this. From the payroll tasks, you can run it from this link section, or you can go into the main reports option and you find it in the period end folder. This one here, Form P32 Employer Payment Record. Just going to run it for month 3. And as you can see here, we've got some SMP that we've recovered. So at the start of the month, the employee was getting SMP. We've got shared parental pay recovered. And as a small employer, we are getting that NI compensation as well. That in turn has reduced our liability. So we've got a total amount due that we need to pay, and we will need to submit an EPS to report the reclaim values. So that can be done via a link, employer payment summary, or from the e-submissions tasks. You choose this option at the top, you're adjusting your payment as you have recovered statutory pay. It displays the tax month the submission relates to, and then you've got a view of the amounts that you've reclaimed for the tax year to date. So this is cumulative values. The statutory maternity pay is what we've reclaimed since the 6th of April. This is the first reclaim of shared parental pay, but when we do this next month, again, it will be the cumulative value that appears here. CIS deduction suffered, not applicable. And in this case, there's no apprenticeship levy. So you complete the wizard. You can ignore this warning. This is just because I'm in the training environment. And then we've got the submission. So EPS submission, you can check your credentials, go ahead and submit it, and then you get your confirmation message. And if you ever need to look back at any reclaim values, what you've submitted previously, or you can't remember if you sent an EPS, just jump into your e-submissions log. And this is the one we've just sent. You can look at the details. You can then go to more details. It shows you those year-to-date values. And that is the payment reclaimed. And that actually brings us to the end of the presentation. So I'm going to run through the further support options as we do at this point. And if you have any questions you've been saving, please drop them into the Q&A. And we'll have a look at answering those before we close the session. In terms of further support though, look no further than our online help centre, sage.co.uk/help. You can also access the same content within Sage 50 Payroll by pressing the F1 key. It's a function key at the top of your keyboard, which will bring up the context-sensitive help for whatever you happen to be doing in the software at that time. If you're accessing via a browser, you can go into the section for absences and statutory payments to find information on all of the parental pay. You can also search our knowledge base by entering a keyword and doing a search. You can check out the other webinars that are scheduled this month by clicking on this webinars option towards the top of the screen. And should you need to contact our support team, you will find all of the options to get in touch from the support guides. Also, to give Sage University a quick plug, this is available, valuable resource for you that you can use free of charge at sageu.com. There's a range of e-learning courses, which will take you through everything you need to know using your 50 Payroll software. You can even do the online certification, be officially certified in your product, and you can dip in and out of our bite-sized learning as well. So if you haven't already been on this, you can go to sageu.com and create your profile from there. And then you've got a wealth of information available to you. So it is over to questions now. I'm going to shortly go on mute to give Calvin a hand. Not sure how many have come through. It's been quite a quiet session today, I think. But if you have anything else you want to ask, do submit it in the next few minutes. If you want to grab a copy of our handouts, they are still available as well from the documents icon. And for those of you who are leaving now, you will get a follow-up email in about an hour. It contains a link to the recording of the session. So look out for that. And as you exit the webinar, when you click the exit button, you should be prompted to complete a survey, and really appreciate any feedback that you might have on this webinar and any ideas for improvements. So I will go on to mute briefly, and once we've cleared all of the questions, we'll get things wrapped up for you. So I will speak to you shortly. Okay, so thanks so much for the questions that came through. Not too many today, so giving us a bit of an easy ride. Thank you. As there's been nothing come through the last few minutes, we are going to call it a day there. Just last chance to say thanks once again for joining us at the webinar today. If you could take a minute to complete our exit survey, very much appreciate that. And look out for your follow-up email arriving later today, usually in about an hour's time. You get a link to today's recording, as well as a link to register for our future sessions. So enjoy the rest of your week, have a great weekend, and perhaps we'll see you on one of our other webinars soon. Goodbye for now.